So I was going through some numbers, and I'm going to go over with you the differences in the numbers of white people compared to black people here in the United States. So let's get started. Let me get up to the ratios and numbers here. Let's see. All right. So okay. All right. What percentage of the U.S. do white males make? Is the question I asked my chat GPT, and he basically said white males make up 37% of the U.S. population. Okay. About 37% of the U.S. population is white males based on the most recent census estimates. Okay, so 37%, that's almost 40%. That's almost, if you round that off, that's almost 40% of the population. Okay. Go to the next question. What percentage of the U.S. do black males make? Black males make up about 6% of the U.S. population here in the United States, according to the census estimates. That would roughly be about 19.5 million black men as of 2025. The total U.S. population in 2025 was about 341.8 million. Round that off, it would be about 340 million, roughly. Okay? So you divide that into that. That gives a national dividing. Those give a national share of black men making up about 6% of the population. Overall, black Americans, when you add black women into that equation, make up around 13% of the population, with men representing about 48% of the black population. Okay? What percentage of the U.S. population do black females make? White women make up about 38% of the U.S. population. White women alone, based on the census-aligned data. The estimate comes from combining, white women and women. Women are two key figures. The estimate comes from combining two key figures. Women are 50% of the U.S. population. White Americans, and that includes Hispanic, are 74.8% of the population when you include the Hispanics. So roughly white females make up 38% of the total of the U.S. population. Now let's compare that to black women. Okay, again, let's go over that again. White females make up approximately 38% of the total of the U.S. population. Okay, so black women let's see. Black women make up 6% of the U.S. population. Okay, so black women are 52% of the black population, slightly outnumbering black men. And the most reliable way, let's see, to answer that would be the actual number of black men and black women in the U.S. are about 13%, okay, of the population. So there are 2 black women for every 1 black man. Okay. And let me go up here and check some other numbers here. Okay, so for every 1 black woman in the United States, there are about 6 white women. And for every black man in the United States, there are about 6.5 white men. Okay. So when we look at the percentages of the United States, white women make up around 38% of the population. Black women only make up 6% of the population. So do you see why it's a problem when white women come into the black community and take most of our men out of the community? Even 1 man is too many. When you make up almost 40% of the population in the United States and we only make up 6%, even 1 man taken out of the black community is too many. Okay? Because white people make up almost 6.5 times the amount of people that black people have in our community. Okay? So this is why, this is one of the main reasons why a lot of black women don't really want white women coming into our community dating our men, because we have so few. If we outnumber black men 2 to 1, and then we're having to compete with a population that outnumbers us almost 6 times the amount, that's an awful lot of people compared to 6% of the United States. 6% compared to 38%, and I'll just round that off. 6% compared to 40% is a very small number. So do you see why it's so noticeable to black women when white women or non-black women come into the community and date black men. Do you see why it's so noticeable? Because they're almost 6 to 7 times the amount. They have almost 6 to 7 times the amount of people in their community than we have in our community. So that's why it's so much more noticeable when you make up only roughly 6% of the United States compared to almost 40%. That's a very, very low number compared to 40%, 6 measly percent compared to 40%. And you mean to tell me that white women are coming into the community at an alarming rate, dating, marrying, and procreating with black men because for whatever reason there's 6 times the amount of men in your community and you can't find anybody that you're interested in? You have to go into a community that is not even 10% compared to 40% to find someone? Do you see why this is kind of irritating? Besides the historical factor that there's a bad history between the two races. Okay? So the fact that we don't really have a good history, but we don't have a very good ancestral history. And not just that, we don't have a very good relationship with white people in general. Okay? And I'm not saying all white people, but let's just call it out for what it is. The majority of them, we don't really have a good relationship with them like that. Okay? Not good enough to where I would feel comfortable if I had a son, allowing my son to marry my oppressor's daughter. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that at all. Not with the stuff that I had to go through in my life dealing with white people, and even to this day dealing with white people. I wouldn't be comfortable if I had a son that dated outside his race at all. So now let's just say, okay, that if the population with black people was 40% of the United States, and the population with white people was, let's just say 40%. Then would it make a difference as far as interracial dating goes? Well, I still wouldn't want my son to marry outside the race. Probably not. But, however, would I be against interracial dating on average? And the answer would be no. And why? Probably because there's a whole lot more black men. There would be a whole lot more black men to choose from. And so the chances of actually getting one would be almost 100 times higher than it is now. The chances of getting a man from my own community would be a lot higher than it is now. When you compare 6% to 40%, and you're having to compete with white women, Hispanic women, Asian women, Arabian women, and other black women, and mulatto women, black women almost have zero chance of dating men that come from their wombs. When you bring all these other people into the equation of 40% of the population, and you're having to compete with all these other races combined with white women, that almost leaves black women with practically nothing. But yet we're the ones giving birth to the black male species, to the black male race. But we don't really even have an opportunity to date them because their preference is really not us, and we're having to compete with all these other races. Okay? So, I would love to see this situation flipped around. I would love to see how white women would react if they were in an environment where they were only 6% of the population and black people were 40% of the population, and we were going into their community dating all of their rich men with financial potential. And not just that, just hanging out with their men. Anything we wanted to do, we were going into their community to get their men to do it. So if we wanted male friends, we would go into their community to do it. If we wanted men to hang out with, male friends, we would go into their community to do it. Want to get married? Go into their community to do it. Want to marry someone rich? Go into their community to do it. Just like what they're doing to us here in the United States. I wonder how they would react if the numbers were switched around and they made up 6% of the United States and black women made up 40% and black men made up, the other 40%. Okay, so that we altogether we're about 74% of the United States and they're only at 13%. Would they still be for interracial race mixing? I seriously doubt it. Okay, I seriously doubt it. How would they feel if black women were going into their community dating, marrying, and procreating with all of their men who had financial potential? All of their movie stars, all of their NBA players, all of their NFL players, all of their movie stars, all of their men with college degrees, all of their men with any kind of potential, any kind of charisma, anything that stands out about him, anything good, he automatically goes to black women. How would they perceive that then if the tables were switched around? I would love to see what type of reactions that they would have if they would then be so for all this race mixing if the tables were turned around. Because see, the thing about it is that white women don't ever put themselves in anybody else's shoes because they don't have to. They're not concerned about the numbers in the black community. They're not concerned at all. They do not care. They don't give two shits about the percentages, numbers wise, the differences in ratios and percentages on a number scale. They don't care at all that there's almost 7 times more of them than there is us. They don't give 2 cents about black women being single, 75% single in the black community. They don't care one bit because as long as it's not affecting them, they could care less. They don't care about the black family. Obviously, they don't give a fucking ass concern at all. Because if it's not affecting her, she could care less. And even if she's told about it, her attitude is, that's your problem. If there's not enough people in your community, that's your problem. Because as long as I can get him, as long as he's willing to come for me, you're just shit out of luck. That's how they see things. They don't care one iota about the numbers and percentages in the black community at all. They don't care about the fact that the black family is ruined. They don't care. That's your problem. As long as she can get what she wants, she don't give two shits about how it's affecting the black family, the black community, none of that. And white men are the same way. They don't care. They don't give an iota about what's going on in the black community. If it's not affecting them, they do not care. Sure, they know that black women are 75% single. They don't care. They don't give 2 cents that white women are coming into the black community, destroying the black family. White men could care less, because if they cared, they would put a stop to all this. But they don't care, because part of the reason why all this is happening is to keep the black family split up, separated, and divided. And the reason why is because black people are more of a threat if they come from a good foundation. If they have a good, strong family, their chances of competing as a whole are a lot more challenging. And they saw this with Rosewood, with Black Wall Street, and all of the other black communities that put themselves together and did very well with segregation. They saw that. And that's one of the reasons why they are pushing a lot of this race mixing and interracial dating, because they don't want to see the black family together. Because, again, I just said, if you come from a black family, a strong, good, black foundational family that has a good, strong foundation, you guys are doing good, you're going to church, so you got your spirituality together, you got your education together, that's a threat. They don't want that. They would rather have their daughters coming into your community, keeping your family split up. That's why they promote race mixing. They don't want black people to have good, strong, foundational families, because that would be a threat. They saw Black Wall Street. They saw Rosewood. They saw all of the communities that black people built, and they had to come and burn it down and start these race wars by COINTELPRO putting white women in positions to where they would lie on purpose and say some black man winked at them or touched them the wrong way and started a whole war. All that type of shit was planned. That's why that white woman got off scot-free with no nothing happening to her for lying on a black man. You know, I mean, and this is the thing that I don't understand. You know, you would think that black people would be, after going through a lot of the historical things that we went through, including Jim Crow, you would think that black people would be climbing the walls to get out of the United States at a chance to get to Africa. And I think the only reason why a lot of them are not leaving is because a lot of us have never been over there. We haven't seen what Africa has to offer. And I got to be honest with you, I don't think there's a lot of employment opportunities available over in Africa like there is here in the United States yet. But I think but I believe as Africa prospers more, as they start to make money off of their wealth that they're sitting on top of, when they're able to manage their own diamonds and golds and all that stuff, when they're in charge of their shit that is rightfully theirs, then I think the environment, the employment opportunities over there would be a lot more promising, but I think that that's going to happen in time. In time there will be jobs opening up where I think that they're probably going to, maybe, I don't know for sure, but I think that some of them, might call some African Americans to go over there to fill some of those positions. But then again, there's a lot of Africans that don't really want us over there. But I think that there's more that do want us over there than there are that don't. So, but yeah, I would be very curious to see how white women would react if the tables were switched around and they were 6% of the population. Then how would they react when black women are once again taking all their men with potential out of their community and not giving two fucking cents about their well-being? Would they then be all for all this race mixing and interracial dating? Would they be for it then if the tables were switched around? No, they wouldn't. Not at all. And in fact, it wouldn't surprise me if they weren't, if the tables were switched around and this was happening to them. It wouldn't surprise me if they weren't trying to start a war, or trying to start some type of way to protect their men in some kind of way, because I seriously doubt they would be as passive as we are. I really don't think they would be. I think that they would find ways to try to discourage us from coming into their community and taking their men. But see, black people are very, very passive, and I think they're that way because of fear, because of all the things that happened to us back during the slavery era. There was a lot of bad things that happened, during Jim Crow and back during the slavery times. And so I think that's probably one of the main reasons why, besides going to prison for taking action against something that they don't like that's happening to them. I don't think that really that white women would be as passive as we are at all, considering the fact how jealous a lot of them are and violent that they can be. I don't think they would be as passive. But I sure would like to see, how things would work the other way around. What would it be like if the tables were switched around? How would they act towards us if we were in the position that they're at, where we were the ones running society, and this was our country, and we're 74% of the population. Okay? Then how would they act? And I think there's going to come a time when that's the case. I think that eventually, if they can't get it together, if they keep going on with all this race mixing like they're doing now, eventually it's going to come to that, because you know, there is an awful lot of it going on. There is an awful lot of it going on, and there's no telling, if we go into World War III, and then a lot of them get killed off too, and this race mixing continues, they're going to be not around soon. Because, I mean, if they don't do something, I mean, I can't see their numbers growing, with a war. How are you supposed to get, if you want your birth rates to go up, how are you supposed to do that if you're facing World War III? It's just, I don't know. It's just weird. So, but anyways, I just thought that I would bring that up, to kind of let you guys know, how things are, and why a lot of black women are against it. I don't think I would be so much against it if the numbers and percentage wise were the same. Then I wouldn't be near as against it like I am now. And the only reason why I'm against it, really, it doesn't really have a whole lot to do with race. It does have a lot to do with historical background, not so much to do with race in general, but just the history of the whites and blacks, how they got along, back during the slavery era, and even to this day, how they don't really get along in a lot of ways. That has a lot to do with why I think a lot of black women are reluctant to get into interracial relationships, as well as they're reluctant to allow their sons to get involved with these non-black women. Even though they don't want it, a lot of the times their sons do it anyway. But I seriously doubt so many black women would be against it if we had an equal amount of numbers. So let's just say if there was an even amount, half and half, then I don't think black women would be as against it at all. If black people made up about 37% of the population and white people made up the other half, in equal numbers, then I think it would be more of a interesting, equation. It would be more of a interesting thing to see what would happen, because, there's a lot more black people. And so the chances of black women being married, if we were 50% of the population, would be a whole lot higher than it is when we're at 6%, than it is when we're at 13% of the population compared to 74.5% of the population. I mean, it's not even comparable. 13% compared to, almost round that off, 75%. We're not even 20% of the population. So it's kind of unfair for non-black women, especially white women, to be coming into the black community, taking our men out of the community, and, leaving us at a 75% single rate. Another thing I would like to see happen would be, I would like for black men to be in the shoes of black women. And what I mean by that is, what if we lived in a environment where black men made up about roughly 6% of the population. Black women made up about 5% of the population. And what if white men were coming into the community dating, almost all of the black women, but white women were not as likely to date black men because of a bad history between, the ancestors and today. So if white women were a lot more reluctant to date black men, I wonder how black men would react if 50% of black women were dating outside their race. Then would black men be for all this race mixing? That would be real interesting. Like they are now, that would be real interesting if the tables were switched around. What if black women were the ones that were the desired ones, and we were the ones that had our pick in society, and we were the ones dating all the white men with all the financial potential, and the Hispanic men and the Asian men, while black men had barely anything to pick from? Then would black men be for all this race mixing and interracial dating? Would they be so open at that if the tables were switched around and they were the ones that would be considered undesirable? And if that were to happen, how would black men take that? Would they get violent? Would they start a race war? How would they handle that situation? Would they be so hateful all over the internet, or would they get hateful? Would they defend their ground? What would they do? Would they start, lynching white guys? It's just interesting. So, because I don't really think if the tables were switched around and black men were the ones on the undesired list, I don't think they would take that too well. I really don't. I think they would be a lot more violent. There would be a lot more murders going on with white men possibly coming up DEAD, I think that there would be a lot more violent behavior with black males, I think, because they can barely handle it now. When black women break up with them, they're ready to kill you. A lot of the times when black women break up with black men, a lot of the times they are murdered. A lot of the times they are. So how would black men handle things if the situation were turned around and they were the ones that were on the undesirable list? It's real interesting, if you think about it. And how would they act if mulatto men became the desirable men that the whole world runs after? How would they act then? Would they keep producing them? Would they be against it? What would happen? I think they would probably get very violent with them. I really do. I don't think black men would be near as calm as black women are. Black women have not launched any kind of wars. There's been very few attacks. They're very, very calm, considering the fact that it's very unproportioned. It's a very unproportional, thing that's happening with them. It's unproportionally being manipulated, with the media advertising all this stuff and promoting it while black women are at 75% single rate. It's just very interesting how bad black women are treated in this country. And why black women are not running in droves to get out of here is beyond me, but I think it has a lot to do with fear, because you don't really know what awaits you in some of these other countries. You don't want to hop up and just leave because you really don't know about how things are going to work until you get over there. When you've been in one place your whole life, it's kind of difficult to just get up and leave, and you don't really know what awaits you. It's very easy for these immigrants to come over here and to make a living, because they can come over here and get a loan and they can get jobs and all that kind of stuff. But we as Americans, we can't go to these other countries and have jobs waiting for us, and we can't go to these other countries and live off of these people's tax money the way they do with us. It's not looking like that for us. We can't just go to these other countries like they can come over here and get a job and live a very comfortable life. It's really not that easy, because a lot of them are finding out, it's not as easy as they thought. So they're having to live like 16 people in one household. And that's gotta suck, But yeah, I sure would like to see how things, were if things were switched around, how, society would act. I would love to see that. Okay, and that's pretty much all that I wanted to say on this video. And I think I'll leave it at that. And I will talk to you guys a little bit later in another video. And just one more thing. Stop to think about what I've said. If the situation was switched around, how would you act? All right. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys a little bit later in another video. Thank you.